Everybody. All right, good morning. Welcome. Today's May 28th. We are gathered as the Joint Standing Committee for the Environment and Natural Resources. We have a couple of items on our agenda today. The first will be a work session for Representative Dudera's bill on recycled content in plastic bottles. Then we're going to move on to a discussion with the DEP about the New England Clean Energy Connect corridor. And then I believe we have some language review and perhaps a point of discussion with Representative Toole. Is that right, Dan?
That was the Pope, although I don't see him here yet, but he had said he could only attend for a brief moment.
Well, we'll go ahead and get started and we'll see how it goes. And so with that, let's go ahead and do committee introductions. Representative Bell.
Good morning. Happy Memorial Day weekend. I'm Art Bell. I live here in Yarmouth. I represent House District 47, which is Yarmouth, Chesapeake, and Long Island.
Representative Ziegler.
Sure, you wait till the coffee cup goes up.
I'm sorry.
I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96 in Modo County, the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrow, Palermo, and Searsmont. And I will be going to the EUT committee slightly.
Representative Dudera.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vicki Dudera. I represent District 94, the towns of Camden, Rockport, and the pretty little island of Islesboro.
Representative Fay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Fay. I represent House District 66, which is parts of the towns of Casco, Poland, and Raymond. And if you're out on the water in my district and in Maine this weekend, please wear your personal flotation device. The water is cold.
Representative O'Connor.
Good morning. I am Beth O'Connor. I represent the individuals of House District 5, which is Berwick and North Berwick, and I was swimming in the lake yesterday.
And Senator Bennett.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Others, I am Rick Bennett. I have the privilege of serving 13 towns in Oxford and Cumberland counties, representing the foothills and the lakes region of Western Maine, including the very lovely and special asset of Sebago Lake State Park. I hope you visit there this summer.
Representative Tucker.
Good morning. My name is Ralph Tucker. I have the privilege of serving the great citizens of Brunswick, Maine, and that's House District 50. Thank you.
And I'm Stacy Brenner. I represent Senate District 30, which is all of Gorham, most of Scarborough, and part of Buxton, and it includes Pine Point Beach in Scarborough. And we're joined by Dan Tartikoff, who's our OPLA analyst, and Sabrina Carey, who's our clerk. And as always, we're grateful for your effective and hard work. And with that, let's go ahead and open up a discussion about Representative Dudera's bill. We tabled it. We were waiting for some language. Representative Dudera, do you want to start us off?
Thank you, Senator Brenner. Sure, I'd be happy to. Just for the benefit of our new member of the committee, this is a bill that requires plastic beverage containers that are covered under the bottle bill to be made with a portfolio average of 25% post-consumer recycled plastic 2026. And then that threshold increases to 30% by 2031. We started the bill using manufacturers as the responsible parties for this, but one switch that was made fairly early on is that one of the amendments requires initiators of deposits and spirit manufacturers with respect to the recycled content. So instead of having the manufacturers reporting, we are now having the IODs respond. And we've got other amendments. This turned out to be a fairly complex, as you delve into the initiators of deposits and who is contributing what. It is a fairly complex little web, but we have made incredible progress. And I basically want to really just thank the people who've been responsible for that progress today. And that's mainly Brian Beneski and Paula Clark from the department, Tim Boulin from Bablo, Sarah Nichols from NRCM, Newell Auger from the Maine Beverage Association, Bree Deatley, and of course, Dan Tartikoff, who's done an incredible job. I think he'll take us through some of the various changes that we've made, including exemptions for folks who are producing a very small amount of plastic bottles in our state, and a waiver process. It's complicated. Those of you who've hung in with me here, I really appreciate it. I think we've got a great product. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan now to do the major bulk of the explaining for us. Thanks.
Does everyone actually want me to go through in detail, or is that too much for Friday morning?
If you could give us the highlights of the amendment as it relates to Balbo, that would be helpful.
So if you recall, the issue as Representative Dudera explained was the original bill regulated manufacturers of beverages in plastic bottles or containers. And for administrative purposes, DEP had recommended changing to initiators of deposit under the bottle redemption law. And that presented an issue with respect to Bablo, which is the initiator of deposit for all spirits containers. And so following a number of discussions, the amendment that we sent to you this morning now regulates two different groups of entities that are subject to the plastic recycled content requirement. One being initiators of deposits for any plastic containers that are not containing spirits. So everyone but IODs for spirits, which is to say everyone but Bablo. And then in terms of spirits containers, we're creating a new term we're calling spirits manufacturers, and that includes in-state distilleries and another entity called a rectifier, which is an entity that mixes spirits with other spirits or other products to create a new product. And it also includes what are called certificate of approval holders, and those are the out-of-state suppliers that provide spirits to Bablo to be distributed and sold in the state. And so the amendment has to make a lot of changes to incorporate those two terminologies, and it was challenging in a number of places because in the case of initiators of deposit for non-spirits containers, there are many initiators that are distributing products from a variety of manufacturers, and so there was a need to address situations that might arise there. But that isn't the case in terms of a spirits manufacturer. They're really only going to be selling their own products, whether or not they make them directly or someone else bottles them for them. They're going to have all the information that they need to comply. There were issues that came up with the possibility of an initiator of deposit for non-spirits containers not being able to get the information they need to report or pay applicable fees from the manufacturers they initiate for. And so all of these added more and more complexity to the bill. So as Representative Dudera stated, it's a relatively simple concept, but if you go through the amendment, you'll see that I initially tried to shade the changes from the original bill, but I think there's more shading than there is non-shading. But that's where it stands right now. I believe all the entities that Representative Dudera had mentioned are in agreement on this amendment. I can answer any specific questions anyone has, but it sounds like going section by section through the amendment may not be a great use of our time.
Thank you, Dan. Before we go any further, I'm hoping that we can have an introduction from our two members who have just joined us, Representative Bloom.
Yes, Lydia Bloom. I represent House District 3 in York.
And Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lori Gramlich, and I represent House District 13, which is the lovely seaside community of Old Orchard Beach. And happy Friday, everybody.
Thank you. Representative Tucker.
I move that LD 1467 ought to pass as amended in the amendment in my hand here, the one we received this morning. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Second.
Representative Gramlich. Any discussion from the committee? Yes, Representative or Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. One is with respect to the annual registration fee going to $500 for some people, where does that money actually go?
Do you mean what it's used for or where it actually lands?
You know, where does it land? Where does that fee? Who administers it? What do they use it for?
It goes to DEP. The fees are deposited into the Maine Environmental Protection Fund, which takes a lot of different fees, mostly licensing fees and other payments, but these would be specifically dedicated to offset DEP administrative costs for this program.
Representative Dudera may have a reply too, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Yes, I can't find my little hand. There it is. I just wanted to say too that we are going to get an accounting so that we're going to be able to track this separately, even though it's going into, you know, a bigger fund. We're going to be able to see how many fees we actually, registration fees we gather, whether we get any penalties. So we're going to be able to keep track of it and see how the program progresses.
Okay, thanks. If I may, just a couple other questions.
Of course.
So one is about the exemptions. I'm just looking at this afresh here, and I couldn't find exactly where they are. But Dan, could you run over what if there are exemptions and what they are?
Sure. So I believe the primary exemption is if you are if you're following along on page 4, it's subsection 4, paragraph B, and it excludes from payment of the registration fee only a initiator of deposit or spirits manufacturer that in the prior calendar year sold, offered for sale, or distributed less than 10,000 containers or less than 200 pounds of plastic that's essentially virgin plastic.
So they're exempt from the registration fee, but how does the rest of the law impact those small providers?
They would have to comply with all other requirements, including reporting regarding plastic content, and if necessary, paying any fee for not hitting those plastic content thresholds.
Okay, is that the only exemption?
Representative Dudera had something to add.
Representative Dudera.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to, you know, there's also the waiver provision. So, you know,
I wanted to ask about that too, yeah.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead. So,
Well, with regard to the small, you know, the small manufacturers, they are able to apply for a waiver should they not be able to get the RPET, or if there's disruptions in the supply chain, that kind of thing. So that's an important thing. I mean, anybody can apply for that, but I just wanted to bring that up.
thank you. So that's on page, well, it's under number 6 on page 8. Is that right? And that, I guess it's all laid out there what the waiver process is, and they pay a $100 waiver processing fee and make their case to the department, and they're either granted it or not. Is that basically the way it works?
That's correct. The criteria for approving a waiver, which is stated in that top of that subsection, is due to anomalous market conditions consisting of a disruption in or lack of the supply of post-consumer recycled plastic. So this would be a waiver from payment of the post-consumer recycled plastic content fee, I think we're calling it, under subsection 5, which is if you don't hit that 25% or 30% threshold, you have to calculate a fee based on the amount of, essentially the amount of plastic you're putting into the state between what you have of recycled plastic and where you should be of recycled plastic.
But the only express criterion for that is anomalous market conditions, or is there more basis for a waiver that could be requested?
No, it's essentially that you were not able, due to market conditions, to obtain a sufficient amount of recycled plastic to meet that threshold.
Seems a bit vague, but okay, thanks.
Any additional questions from the committee? Comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor with a second. I believe we're ready for a vote.
Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley, absent. Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Fay,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
10 yes, 3 absent.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Representative Dudera. And with that, we'll close the work session, and I believe we are ready to welcome Nick Livesey from the DEP. Yes, Dan.
So we did advertise this for 9. I don't think it would really matter if you started it 10 minutes early, but I did want to offer that I do have some language reviews if you did want to wait until 9, or we could start it now. And then I guess jumping back to 1467, I've noted this before, but I did just want to note again that there is a proprietary information exclusion in the bill, so it will need a judiciary review. So I'll be drafting up a memo for everyone to review along with 1541s.
So I'm okay moving forward with starting with our conversation. I think folks who are gonna watch it on YouTube, and if they're a few minutes behind, I don't think it's the end of the world. If everyone else is comfortable with that, I'd like to move forward. Okay. Mr. Livesey, I brought him through the wormhole. There he is. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. I was waiting to see which direction you were going to go in. And also there's Jim Byer from the department was going to join us too. Okay. I don't know if he's
bring him over.
Logged in or.
Great. He should be coming right through.
All right.
There he is. Welcome, Mr. Byer.
I don't know if there's anything, Senator Brenner, that you have to ask, or if I should I have some remarks that I'm willing to give you folks. I think I know the questions you have, or at least one of them.
I think a general update on how things are going, probably some feedback about the permit, whether from the earlier part of the winter where we had a conversation with Commissioner Loisum, and then I think Senator Bennett has some specific questions. So maybe we'll start with an update, and you can.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I think committee members know, but for those who might be watching and not, I'm Nick Livesey. I'm the director of the Bureau of Land Resources at the department, and we also have here today Jim Byer. He's one of our regional supervisors, and for the last 3.5 years, he's been the project manager for the NEC-EC project. So I thought he'd be a good person to have handy as well. And my understanding is that the committee's requested this briefing in response to concerns about clearing along segment 1 of the corridor, as presented in a video that was put together by the Maine for Local Power PAC. I'm not familiar with this political action committee, and I'm not here today to wade into the political dialogue surrounding the project. But I'm happy to answer questions you have and talk to you about some of the sort of ongoing development activity that's occurring there. So segment 1 of the NECEC project is the section of the transmission line that runs from Beatty Township at the border with Canada to the forts. And this is the section of the project that involves the establishment of a new transmission corridor. All the other segments of the project are co-located, meaning the new line runs next to an existing transmission line. And so the construction activities along segment 1, specifically the cutting of trees, began just recently on May 15th. Presently, this vegetation removal is being done by hand crews. Jim's been on site to see this activity, as has a third-party inspector. Within segment 1, there are 4 types of vegetation management as required as a condition of the permit issued by the department. One is full canopy height vegetation, and as the name suggests there, that's the transmission line would just go over the trees. There's also a vegetation management requirement in certain
Uh-oh. Mr. Byer, do you feel comfortable to pick up where Mr. Livesey left off? I think he's frozen.
Yeah, I see that. Sure. So another vegetation management technique in segment 1 is areas where the vegetation is to remain 35 feet tall. Then there's several sections where for deer travel corridors. And then finally, the remainder of the segment 1 has tapered vegetation. The entire length of segment 1 is the width of the segment 1 is 150 feet. Centered within the corridor is the transmission line, which has 2 conductors that are 24 feet apart, each with a shield wire, and an additional 15 feet outside that 24 feet is considered the wire zone. During construction and maintenance of the project, that 54 feet swath will be kept clear of vegetation over 10 feet tall. Outside that, there are 3 tapers, each 16 feet wide. The first taper, closest to the wire zone, the vegetation there will be maintained at 15 feet or less. The next taper is, the vegetation will be maintained at a 25-foot height. And then the third taper, the outside most taper, will be maintained at 35 feet. In an untapered corridor, the entire 150 feet gets cleared to down to ground level and then maintained as vegetation less than 10 feet tall. In the tapered corridor, the 54-foot wide wire zone is maintained just the same as any other transmission line. And then you've got the 3 tapers. During construction, each taper, the vegetation taller than the height limit in that taper will be removed. So in the first taper outside the wire zone, where the limit on the height of vegetation is 15 feet tall, all the vegetation over 15 feet will be removed. Presently, the vegetation in segment 1 is being cleared, and the portion of the corridor that's being cleared is the 54-foot wide taper, 15-foot wide wire zone, plus the first 15-foot taper on the outside of the wire zone. What the crews are doing, and they're doing it by hand, as Nick mentioned, they're cutting all of the vegetation in the wire zone and all of the vegetation over 15 feet tall in the 2 tapers on either side. DEP has got a third-party inspector who's been on site at least 2 days a week since they started clearing segment 1, provides reports. He and I've been there I was there on May 15th, May 21st, sorry. And I've seen this. Currently the construction is in compliance with the permit. And I hope that explains what's happening on the corridor presently.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Are there questions from the committee for Mr. Byer? Yes, Representative Dudera.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Byer. I'm curious, when you're talking about maintaining the cutting, or not the cutting so much, but preventing any vegetation from growing. Are herbicides being used at all? Are they being applied for anything? That had been something we had discussed way back.
Herbicides are prohibited on segment 1. What that means is that they have to do more maintenance in segment 1 because it's all hand cutting of vegetation. So the maintenance cycle on segment 1 is every 2 to 3 years, as opposed to a normal transmission line that's every 4 years.
Representative Dudera, did you have a follow-up? No, set. Okay. Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to say that it's really unfortunate that Commissioner Loizon wasn't available to be here herself, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Livesey got technologically distracted. So it's maybe unfair to ask Mr. Byer these questions, but I want to ask you, you were on site, did you actually use a tape to measure the width?
I did not, but the third-party inspector has.
Who is the third-party inspector?
His name's Jared Boyle, and he works for Flycatcher.
Okay. Well, Roger Merchant, who is a professional forester, went to the site, and he measured several widths with a tape. And you're suggesting that the 54-foot, what you call the wire zone, which is the clear cut where the wires and pylons are going. In addition to that, there's another 32 feet total, 16 and 16 on either side. That gives us 86 feet. The clear cut doesn't include a taper, and it is beyond the 86 feet. Mr. Merchant made the observation, and I'm going to read it briefly. He said, "We made 9 right-of-way measurements at sites west of Route 201, around Johnson Mountain, over Coburn, then west to the mining road route. We found that the cut corridor averaged 95 feet in width. The narrowest width was 86 feet, the presumed outer border of the first taper. The widest width was 104 feet. In all cases, trees were simply cut and laid to rest on the corridor site. None were yarded out, cut up, chipped, or processed. From my well-seasoned forest harvesting perspective," he wrote, "my views on the CMP corridor yesterday clearly indicated to me that I was looking at a classic strip clear cut from 201 to the mining road. there was no instance, he concluded, where I was looking at some form of a partial harvest on the cut corridor. I've circulated, there's pictures in the public domain, you've probably seen them, I've circulated them to the committee. It's clear that this was not, there was no tapering, it was a nearly 100-foot clear cut, which isn't that in violation of the permit?
First off, I don't have access to any of the locations where Mr. Merchant took his measurements, okay? Don't know where those are. The other thing is, if all of the vegetation in the taper is taller than the prescribed height for that taper, it gets cut. Okay, so if all of the trees in the first taper are 25 feet tall, there are no 15-foot tall trees left to remain. So, that being said, however, in the places along the Judd Road where the third-party inspector has reviewed the operation, there are some trees less than 15 feet tall which remain in place. Those trees were not cut.
Does your inspection include looking at the height of the trees that have been cut in that taper zone? And what does the report say about that?
The report says the project's in compliance. Okay.
My specific question was about looking at the height of the cut trees.
Yes, they did look at that.
Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. Byer, for being here. Really appreciate it. And just in follow-up to Senator Ben, I have a couple questions, if I may, Madam Chair. Thank you. In follow-up to Senator Bennett's question, in terms of, I thought what I heard you say was that you didn't know where Mr. Merchant had measured and taken his calculations. However, if all of segment 1 is to be treated in the same way, why would that matter exactly where that was?
1 second, Mr. Byer, before you answer, I just want to let everyone know that Nick Livesay is with us by phone. His internet connection's down.
And I'd let Nick respond to that if he's on the line, if he heard the question.
Oh, he's back. I think you're with us by phone and video. Yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm a year and I don't know how many months into this. That's the first time I've been kicked out of a meeting electronically. Jim's going to think it was a setup.
Representative Gramlich, would you like to ask your question again?
Yes, thank you, Senator. And thank you, Mr. Livesay, for being here. I'm not sure if you heard some of the back and forth between Senator Bennett and Mr. Byer, but there was a question about segment 1 and what was being cut in terms of the length and the width of the measurements. And the response Mr. Byer had given, I'm paraphrasing, was that he wasn't quite sure where Mr. Merchant had taken those measurements. And my question is, if section 1 of the corridor is to be all handled and treated with the same regulation, I was curious why it would matter where those measurements were taken.
Yeah, so one of the things that I don't know what questions may or may not have been asked and answered when I was unplugging and plugging in my internet to do the only IT service I know how to do. But where one measures is important, especially if one's measuring where the corridor crosses an existing land management road. And that's because the the way that the corridor is aligned and the land management roads are aligned, they may not be perfectly perpendicular. And so if you measure along the edge of a road where the corridor crosses and it's not perpendicular, the effect is that you're measuring at a diagonal across the corridor. And so geometry tells us that if you measure at a diagonal, it'll be longer than the width of whatever it is you're measuring. So on the Judd Road, for example, that's the case. It's not a perpendicular crossing. So if you measure along the road, you'll have you'll be measuring on an angle.
Thank you. And with regard to the third-party inspector, the question, I have the same question that Senator Bennett has in terms of who was that, and because you weren't probably in, Mr. Livesay, Mr. Byer answered, it was Jared Boyle, who works for Flycatcher, but I'm just simply curious, did that go out to bid to ascertain who that third-party inspector would be?
Jim would have to answer how all of our third-party inspectors are selected. I think so. He may know the specific answer to that in this individual case.
The way the third-party inspector program works is that the department maintains a list of those approved inspectors, and a permittee or a licensee can choose from that list. They typically send us several names, and we respond, acknowledging which third-party inspector we prefer. And that happened in this case. Okay.
Thank you. And I just have one final question, Senator May. It's my understanding that there should not be any work done on segment 1 from June 1st to July 31st due to the threat of habitats for bats. And I'm curious if the third-party inspector is going to assure that this indeed is enforced, and if not, who will be enforcing that?
Well, there's two things there. One, we will obviously know if there's work going on during that period. It's important, I think, to note that's a condition of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit. It's a federal permit condition associated with a federally listed species. So we have many work windows in the permit issued by the department with regard to when work can be done in areas with certain species. I don't believe we have the requirement for the bats. I think that's a federal one. But obviously, we would know if they were doing work then, and we have every expectation that they will not be.
So somebody within the department is going to be enforcing that?
Well, somebody in the department will be monitoring and knowing that, but we aren't in a position to enforce a federal permit, just like the federal government doesn't enforce the state permit.
Thank you.
Representative Tucker.
Mr. Livesay, is this tapering method used in other transmission line areas?
Not in. Sorry, to cut you off.
Just is this tapering idea just for this specific project?
In Maine, yes. I'm not aware of it if it's been done elsewhere or not, and it's worth, I think, noting just for your benefit. So we're talking a lot about 86 feet and 54 feet and 96 feet, but sort of it might be helpful to understand where tapering comes from and sort of why it's what we're trying to achieve with it and what the permit intended to achieve with it. And there are two things that tapering is intended to do. One is intended to minimize the visual impact of the project, particularly from elevated viewpoints during the winter season. If you have a vantage point where you're looking sort of down a corridor, when snow falls, it can be a much more prominent feature. Sort of the wider the the fully cleared area is. So that's one advantage of tapering is the visual impact mitigation. And it's also intended to help mitigate the impact that the corridor has on habitat fragmentation. So one of the things that was, we knew this prior to the testimony, but was certainly evident during the public hearing process, is the unique value that this part of Maine has from an ecological standpoint. It's part of a large contiguous area of basically undeveloped forest land. And so a long linear feature like a transmission line can have a fragmenting feature, or can be a fragmenting feature. And so what that does is it can inhibit wildlife movement, say across a corridor. And so if you have a 150-foot wide corridor that's fully cleared and maintained so that you have 10-foot shrubs, that's a wider area for animals to cross. And so the intent of the permit is to narrow that up to the extent possible through tapering. And the tapering it flows from a necessity to keep vegetation away from the transmission lines, obviously. And so I think what's reflected in the department is the assessment that the more vegetation and the taller the vegetation that we could maintain within the corridor, the better. And so some of that will be maintained in the initial cutting, and some of that will regenerate, through the life of the project.
May I follow up, please?
Yes, please.
Mr. Livesay, it sounds like there are 3 or 4 different levels of taper. And it seems like a difficult cutting job. For example, if you go through the area that's limited to 25 feet, it means you're cutting down all trees that are over 25 feet, but you're cutting them off at the base.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
But then you're leaving, if a tree is not 25 feet tall, then it is not cut down. Is that correct?
So yes, the vegetation management in this section of the corridor will be done on a 2 to 3 year cycle. And that's, I think, probably more regular than some of the clearing that's done along CMP or other transmission line corridors. And one of the reasons is that tapering is required, but another is that there's no herbicide that's going to be used there. So including in the areas underneath the wire zone, there'll have to be some regular vegetation management. So when they go in, if they're in the second taper, to use your example, they'll be looking for trees when they're there during that routine maintenance that are capable of growing over sort of that 25-foot threshold before they come back in 2 or 3 years. They have to be managing it at least on a 3 year cycle, but they might be there on more regularly as well. It's certainly an active process, and one that I don't think CMP was eager to take on, because it requires quite a bit more work than simply manning a 150-foot wide swath.
So if the crew goes in to the 25-foot taper, let's call it, and if all the trees are over 25 feet and there are no trees that are smaller than that, they would cut down all the trees. They would, but one of the things that we intend to work with them on, and that's built into the permit, is as the management of this. So they have the land that they've acquired today, and it's in whatever state it is based on whatever forestry was done there at whatever time in the near past. And so one of the things that we've built into the permit is a requirement that they work to make sure that they don't have solely even-aged stands within these tapers. And so particularly within the second and the third taper, where the vegetation that one would anticipate to grow over time would be more tree and less shrub, that's something that they're going to need to make sure that they're thinking about and working with the department on to try to achieve, so that we don't end up simply with an even age stand. So I guess it's going to be pretty rough until there's a few years to adjust the vegetation to the taper. I think it'll depend a bit on what the starting point is in terms of what the nature of what the forest composition is in any given area along segment 1, which will influence obviously the state of the taper. I think as you go out,
from sort of the first taper to the second taper to the third taper, there's going to be, it's like that there'll be an increasing amount of, trees that remain within the taper at the time of clearing during construction.
Thank you very much.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think that, thank you, Representative Tucker, for those questions. I mean, I think what we've learned is that this tapering business is a fraud because, if you're dropping 80-foot trees around 25-foot trees, this chance of a 25-foot tree surviving is very small. And how do you create a non-even growth taper zone when you're cutting everything repeatedly that reaches a certain height? But I wanted to ask a question, particularly Mr. Livesey, you gave us a geometry lesson about the way that angles cross a straight line. Are you aware of how Mr. Merchant did his measurement?
No, I think that goes back to what Mr. Byer was saying, is I don't think that we have information about where or how or any of that.
But you made an assumption that he was of such limited intelligence that he wouldn't go straight across on a perpendicular.
No, what I think that's actually mischaracterizing what I said. I was using an example of the Judd Road, which is the video that we were sent and asked to watch in preparation for this briefing. And where the Judd Road and the transmission line corridor intersect, it's not perpendicular. And the measurement, at least as reflected in the video, was along the edge of the road. That's simply what I was referring to.
How will concerned citizens, maybe like a professional forester like Mr. Merchant or others who may have information, how should they present that information to the DEP or your third-party inspector? Can they meet with that person? Should they? What is the right way if somebody has independent information that a violation might be occurring to inform you?
Right. I would, many people like to contact us by email, and that's a good way to do it. We have a dedicated email account for this project that's monitored regularly, and that would probably be the most efficient and effective way to send us something.
How can, and what's the process of following up on those emails? Can people expect to hear back from the third-party inspector or from the DEP?
I think that as this project goes along, we will obviously have staff that are monitoring what's going on. We'll have, third-party inspector who's monitoring what's going on, and we'll follow up as appropriate with regard to concerns that are raised, just like we would with any other project.
Can you define as appropriate?
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to convey is that we'll have to assess, we have people that are in the field looking at things. I have every expectation that this project will continue to receive public attention. And so, if the rallying cry goes out to flood the DEP inbox,
that's not what I'm asking.
That will happen. And so we're going to have to make some judgment about which places we go when we go there. Our focus obviously is on ensuring that the permit that's been issued is complied with, and more importantly than that, that there's no environmental harm. And so that's going to be, chief among the things that we're looking at.
I just have to say that I'm not given a lot of faith, given the way you characterize the potential problem with the measurement that concerned citizens actually did on the site in multiple locations. And I would very much value if Mr. Merchant could meet with somebody at DEP or your third-party inspector and share that information directly, and you can assess it then rather than sending it through an email system.
I mean, we're not hiding from anybody, Senator Bennett. If folks have information that they want to send to us, they're welcome to do it, and we will certainly look at it. Right now, we're finding out about these concerns through press releases and things, and that's just the way the process seems to be working right now.
I think I appreciate your answer there, actually, but I also think that there's so much public attention to this that people feel that they need to air publicly in order to make sure that their concerns are heard. And I think that's what's driving it. Madam Chair, I have some other general questions about the DEP permitting process that don't relate necessarily to this current matter of Section 1. But I'll defer.
Thank you. Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Livesay. Just in follow up to Senator Bennett's question in terms of this particular issue, and I certainly can appreciate not wanting to have one's inbox flooded with emails, believe me. But with regard to this particular issue, what is the department's plan to follow up with this? Because now it is brought to the department's attention and we need to get some resolution. So what is the department's plan?
So for instance, the first video that we saw, the one that was forwarded to us in preparation for this meeting, that video we looked at, and on Tuesday of this week, the third party inspector went to that location where the video was shot, reviewed what was going on in the field, conducted their own measurements, and reported back to us. And so, you know, I think that's before this committee had reached out to us. That was on our own accord, before any member of the public had reached out to us. Quite frankly, it was sort of through the I'm not sure how we learned of the video, but we did, and we followed up on it. And so I anticipate that we're going to continue to follow up on concerns that people raise, including making sure that when CMP is doing the clearing, that they're doing so in accordance with their permit. But I'm not gonna commit that every single time somebody alleges a violation that we're going to be able to run to that spot instantly. We're going to try to do our best to get to areas, and we certainly want to make sure that there are no violations and there's no environmental harm. And so we're going to continue to take these things seriously, just like we did this week.
Thank you. So, in a particular case, when there is an alleged violation and you have followed up on it, and I'm sure you have a process and you may not want to disclose it in its entirety, but you know, here we have an issue right in front of us. What is the department's intent to reconcile that?
So, as I said, the video we've looked at, if Mr. Merchant wants to send us information on, you know, where he measured things and how he did it, we'd be happy to look at that and learn more. And then we can proceed from there. But as I said, that's not how this process will work. We haven't even had an alleged violation with regard to the video. It's a video out there in the public sphere, but not anyone that I'm aware of reaching out to us. And so we're sort of in this, where the department finds ourselves sort of in an interesting spot where there's a big PR campaign going on out there with lots of information swirling around, and we're kind of being pulled into the middle of that. And I'm not sure that our role is to be the arbiter of political action, you know, committee campaigns, whether one's for or against this.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, Representative Hanley, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Good morning, Senator. Thank you. Apologize for being late. I had other things going on. I am Jeff Hanley. I represent District 87, which is the towns of Pittston, Onawascasset, and Randolph.
Thank you, Representative. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Livesay, so if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that the video that has been circulating has not been presented to the DEP in a complaint format from the producer of the video.
That's my understanding. That's not how it was brought to my attention, no.
Okay, thank you. Senator Bennett?
Yeah, I find this really interesting, this characterization of this being a political action committee thing. Twice now, Mr. Livesay has referred to it that way. I have brought this video and a rather lengthy note to our chairs, which I think you probably saw, that outlined the concerns. I did that as a citizen and as a senator, asking through proper channels for this briefing to the chairs of this committee. And so I don't understand this. This isn't like some sort of understandable way that the DEP is being asked, because the reason that you're here is resulting from that rational, understandable process. And I want to thank the chairs for giving us the opportunity. But and now I hear complaining that, oh, it wasn't brought in a proper way. I don't, and that there's politics involved with it, or political action committee. So I just have to say, I just don't follow that reasoning at all and object to it in the most strenuous terms. I mean, this is an opportunity to get a clearing on this question. And for one, I'm not terribly satisfied by a lot of your answers, Mr. Livesey.
Senator Bennett,
can I just ask for some two specific things, information requests?
Sure, but I'm going to reply to your comment first.
Okay.
I appreciate your comment, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. And I think it's important for us to keep our eyes on this project. But I will point out that the video at the end does say that it was produced by a political action committee.
Absolutely, but it doesn't really matter to me who's producing it. Is coming through a proper channel, like here's information. Can you respond to it? And I hear a dismissal of the information based on where it's coming from, which is an extremely unfortunate kind of response.
If I may respond,
yes.
Long before the video came through any proper channels, we followed up and made sure the third-party inspector went to that site.
Good. The information requests that I have are, number one, I'd like to see copies of the third-party inspectors' reports. Secondly, I would like to see what kind of training records that CMP has that clearly state how they handle the tapering zone and how it's to be protected in the cutting process. If you have those, that would be very helpful.
Are those published on the website for the DEP?
I'm not sure what training records, what that is intended to get at, but certainly the vegetation management, the vegetation management plan that CMP has is available on our website.
I'm assuming, if I can offer some clarity, the training records that you might be referring to, Senator Bennett, would be what are the requirements for being included in the list of third-party entities that a project can hire in order to oversee specific aspects of the permit, correct?
Exactly what I was getting at. I mean, I'm sure that there's communications between CMP and the contractors about how they are to meet the DEP permits relating to tapering. And that's the information I'd like to see.
All right. Are there any additional questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, I have some general questions that don't relate to Section 1, if I might.
Okay. Are there any additional questions for Section 1? Okay. Let's move on to your more general questions, Senator Bennett.
Thank you. And I appreciate the committee's indulgence. Several months ago, Commissioner Loisem committed to providing updates as needed or as appropriate with respect to some of the DEP permitting questions. And I was wondering if Mr. Livesey or someone else from the department is prepared to give us an update on those permitting questions. Particularly, there were a couple of minor amendments that were supposed to go to public hearing. I don't know where those sit, and perhaps you could address that.
Well, the department's issued 2 minor revisions. A couple weeks ago. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but I do recall it was a Friday. And I'll take them, I guess, in turn. So one of the minor revisions included sort of, I guess, a compilation of changes that CMP proposed, or CMP and technically CMP and NECEC Transmission LLC. They're 2 separate legal entities, but that they proposed along throughout the project. Some of them were involved activity in segment 1 and others in other places. And that included a minor reroute or adjustment of the corridor location around Bowman Airfield to accommodate FAA requirements. It included some minor adjustment in pole locations. I think they had some survey corrections, and so they adjusted the corridor in places. There were, I don't remember how many different sort of bits and pieces. There was some substation work that they did where they were able to acquire some different properties, so they could access a substation in Lewiston by a different means, which allowed them to avoid wetlands impact. There were a couple of components to the original application that, based on the department's review, we determined did not qualify as a minor revision. This involved sort of an adjustment that they proposed at, well, I'll call it sort of the southern end, if you will, of segment 1, where it ran into a substation, and they're proposing a lateral sort of adjustment of the corridor there. And based on sort of the extent of the adjustment and some wetlands that were in that area, the department determined that it required a more fulsome analysis than would be appropriate in the context of a minor revision. There was also a stream crossing that involved habitat for a threatened or endangered species, and the department determined that was a type of review that wasn't appropriate for minor revision. So we told CMP that they wouldn't be processed that way, and they withdrew those parts of their proposal. But the other pieces of that were approved, as I said, a week or two ago. So that's minor. I'll call that minor revision number 1 for sake of making it easier. And then minor revision number 2 involved the department's review of a field adjustment process. So with large construction projects, transmission lines, wind power projects, things of that nature, it's not uncommon that in the course of sort of getting out in the field and doing the project, that you realize, for example, a beaver dam was built since permitting, and now there's sort of a different wetland and you need to adjust your access road. And the way that gets accommodated is through a field adjustment. And so we've sort of built that into this permitting process here, formally through the issuance of this minor revision that outlines what can and can't be done as a minor adjustment or field adjustment. Field adjustment involves a review by the third-party inspector, and in some cases also the department. So if you need to adjust the location of a guy wire because the soils in that area where you plan to anchor it aren't quite as suitable as you'd hope, then that can be done through a field adjustment that Jim, for instance, would look at. So we've approved 2 minor revisions. Minor revision 1 is sort of a compilation of changes that I mentioned, and number 2 is the field adjustment process.
Thank you. And the CMP abandoned the other 2 when they rose to a different level of scrutiny. Is that right?
They have not submitted an application for us to review to make those changes. So
okay. My
expectation is that they obviously can't do. They can only do what they've been permitted to do. We just spent quite a bit of time talking about that and so on and so forth. And so they can't do these other 2 little changes, or maybe they're not little, but the 2 changes unless permitted by the department. They haven't filed any application to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions for Mr. Byer or Mr. Livesay? Thank you both so much for joining us. Representative Gramlich.
Thank you. Just I want to thank both gentlemen for being here on such short notice. And I would personally, and I'm not sure how other committee members feel, and I know we're kind of winding down our work, but I would really appreciate some follow-up with regard to this particular issue so that we know what the department's resolution is particularly with segment 1. I'm personally interested in hearing what will transpire in terms of this swath of land and what I'm, in my opinion at least, and I'm not a professional, I'm not an engineer, I don't work in the forest industry, but when I look at the pictures, it looks to me like clear cutting. So I would most certainly appreciate a follow-up from the department in terms of their resolution with this matter.
Thank you, Representative Gramlich. All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Have a great long weekend. Okay, and with that, we're gonna turn it over to Dan for some language review.
Yep, so I just sent out an email that is coming. There we go. And I think I will screen share these. Just give me a sec. So we were hoping to have more final with fiscal available than I have. As I'm sure you can imagine, the recent change package has taken precedence for the Office of Fiscal and Program Review. So I expect we'll be seeing fiscal reviews to go along with the vast majority of the bills that we voted that are waiting. But in most instances, I didn't think it was a good use of time to bring back final amendment language that you'd already reviewed either after or prior to a vote, just to see it, in a perfectly cleaned up state with any minor technical changes. So I have brought back a couple that are final and a couple where the language might have changed a little bit. So the first is LD 909, an act regarding the depth of Phillips Lake in the town of Dedham. This was a unanimous ought to pass as amended. Substantively, the amendment is what you reviewed previously. There have been a couple organizational changes made by the revisor's office, but the primary reason I'm bringing this back is the fiscal review was completed and no fiscal notice required, so this can be reported out whenever I get a chance today. I can go on to the next one unless anyone has any questions. 946 was resolved to authorize Maine as the non-federal sponsor with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for the shore damage mitigation project in Saco. You did see a version of this previously. I primarily wanted to get this out just so that the language is available to everyone, so that any stakeholders or others could review it and make sure there's no odd tweaks that happen in the reviser's process. As I noted in the email I sent out, this is still awaiting the completion of a fiscal analysis. LD 1161 is an act concerning marina-based restaurants in the shoreland zone. This was one of Deirdre's bills, but I'm covering this for her today since she is stuck in EUT, where I will soon go to be stuck. This language is largely the same as what you reviewed previously. It wasn't included here, but Deirdre has noted for me that the fiscal office reviewed this and determined no fiscal notice required. So this will be reported out. This was a divided report. Majority ought to pass as amended, minority ought not to pass. 1415 is another of Deirdre's bills. This is originally an act regarding minor revisions to existing site location permits, exemptions for rerouting stormwater, and exemptions for new construction or modification of an existing licensed development under the site location of development laws. The committee unanimously agreed to amend this into a resolve, directing DEP to determine staffing needs to more efficiently and effectively issue decisions on new amendment and minor revision applications. This language, I believe, is consistent with the language Deirdre prepared for you that was voted on. There is a fiscal note that notes a minor cost increase to general and other special revenue funds at DEP, noting that additional costs of this review are anticipated to be minor and can be absorbed within existing budgeted resources. And then the final language I brought for you is just the final language for LD 1505, an act to restrict the use of PFAS in firefighting foam. The primary reason for bringing this back, as with 946, was just to get this final language in the public domain, since I know there are a number of stakeholders here. I think really the only change that that I made was as a result of my legal review, the notice and recall provisions. I had a lot of superfluous language in there. So with the help of my reviewer, I've been able to streamline that language. Hopefully it is still maintains the intent of that provision, but with fewer words, which is always good. So for this one, we do not have a fiscal note available yet. The review is still pending. So I can answer any questions about any of those that anyone might have. I think it's still probably going to be a discussion with the chairs as to whether or not the committee will meet again to take up any other business or conduct language reviews. But at this point in the session, it is not atypical to start doing reviews electronically. So I would probably, as I get them, plan on sending you out fiscal notes and giving you a time frame in which to raise issues or concerns and then send them out.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions from the committee for Dan about what we've gone through so far? Any questions about Representative Tucker?
I just wanted to thank Dan for the review. I think we have on the Phillips Lake, we're going to have some very happy sponsors on that, as well as the representative from Saco. I've been looking forward to releasing those from committee. I think nobody disagrees with those particular bills. Thank you.
And any questions for Dan regarding moving forward with language review via email? Okay. All right. And I don't see Representative Toole, so I believe we will move forward without following up on his request for now.
Yeah, I will have to circle back with my office director. It is a matter of I guess of public note because it's a vote on a bill. So what had happened is Representative Toole wishes to record a motion of ought to pass as amended on LD 1541, and his report will be essentially to replace the bill with the original version of LD 1471. So if you recall, there was the majority report amendment on 1541. The minority report at the time of the vote was ought not to pass. Either three, I think it was 3 members ought not to pass, and there was a couple absentees. Representative Toole would like to be ought to pass as amended on a separate minority report. The joint rules are a bit murky. There's a number of somewhat conflicting provisions about being able to record a vote absent versus having to have all reports stated at the time of the vote. And the way our office has interpreted this is to essentially require some sort of public acknowledgement of all reports. So I suppose because this might be our last meeting, I just wanted to, I guess, make the public acknowledgement myself, and Representative Toole has confirmed to me that that is his intent, so that I can start with processing that. But it's not something that would require reconsideration.
Representative Tucker.
I think we as a committee should accept Representative Toole's request and implement it. And if we need to come up with some parliamentary device to do so, I'd like to do that. And so I'd like to ask Representative Hanley, if he's following this, if we could have a little dialogue here and talk about that. Perhaps Representative Hanley could make the request on behalf of Representative Toole, if that might work. I think we should do it. I don't think there's any question what Representative Toole wants. He's out straight. This is a crazy time. He's the lead in another committee. Everybody's going at 100 miles an hour. We're done. We have thought about it. We're under no pressure at this time. It seems to me we should just allow Representative Toole to implement his vote the way he wants to. And I would turn that over to Representative Hanley to see if he agrees with that approach.
That, Representative Tucker, is exactly why we like having you on this committee. You're such a gentleman.
Yeah.
Representative Hanley?
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, Representative Tucker, you took the words right out of my mouth. So I second your motion. Let's do this. Out of respect for Representative Toole, let's allow him to vote as he wishes.
All right, Dan, we'll rely on you too.
I think that's sufficient as long as there was a public discussion of it and I have witnesses. So I think I'm good to process that for now. It's every legislature, so the joint rules are adopted at the beginning, and no one who's trying to figure out, what committees people are going to be on, how the session is going to run, really wants to have a discussion about the minutia of the joint rules. And for years, we've been trying to clarify this discrepancy that says an absent member can record their vote, but then in another section, it says all amendments to the original bill have to be made at the time of the vote. So we've treated an ought to pass or an ought not to pass that's recorded after a vote as that's fine because it's not an amendment to the bill. But if it's an actual amendment, then it gets into a very gray area. And it usually can be solved by just describing it at language review, but we may not have the opportunity to do that.
Senator Bennett?
Well, one of the committees that I requested to be served on and was actually appointed to was the Rules Committee. And Dan is correct that unhappily, the Rules Committee has not yet convened this legislative session. And and I will also confirm that that during my last tour of duty here 20 years ago, this ambiguity still persisted then. So I'm not sure the legislature is properly organized to ever repair and reform its rules. But I will take this one in, and should the Rules Committee meet, I will be happy to raise it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, and with that, I think we are at the end of our official work. Are there any comments, announcements? Yes, Representative Dudera.
Thank you. I just wanted to offer to Representative Hanley, and I did email you about this, that if you have any questions about the post-consumer plastic recycled bill, which we discussed and voted on this morning, happy to have a conversation with you about that. I think we addressed your concerns. So let me know if you'd like to have that talk today. Thanks.
Senator Bennett.
I perceive that we are on the cusp of adjourning for probably a long period of time. And I just wanted to express my gratitude to the two chairs, in particular, Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker, for running our committee with such grace and politeness, courtesy, and respect for everybody on all sides of every issue. And it was a joy to be part of that and a joy to serve with you and the rest of the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So would you still have rather stayed with EUT, or do you think maybe you lucked out?
You know, fortune is a curious mistress. I'm very happy with being able to join all of you and looking at EUT and what their week and their next weeks are like. I count myself among the fortunate, so thank you.
All right, well, it's been a true honor and a ton of fun to spend the last handful of months with all of you, and I'm really proud of our good work together. And I hope that in the next month, before we're finished with session, that we might all be able to gather together as a full committee in person for at least an unofficial hello and some congeniality. So I look forward to that next month. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.